I'm still struggling to get enough paint on my brush. So most of the time I have to load it twice to do a petal. And so I'm just doing
on the paper. Perfect.
On cardstock.
Yeah.
But I can't keep enough in my brush, and I can't figure out what I'm doing wrong. I think I might be pressing too hard, like always.
Definitely on the cardstock, don't be afraid to go over it twice, honestly.
Yeah, I do, but I'm having a hard time.
Okay, so maybe you need to add a little bit more in your blending pile.
And I can't get it to stay in the blending pile.
Or dip more often. So you're just gonna keep.
My blending pile is.
Yeah, so you just keep going dip, and keep working it. Right, and then know that when you're working on a plastic or glass item, you're gonna get a lot more. Like, look how far I can go. Right, so when you get on this paper, again, I'm gonna go and re-dip. Right, keep making sure that you're adding to that blending pile because you're using it. Right, so you got to keep adding to it. If you put too much, then it starts getting really gloopy, and then it pushes the walls.
How do you keep it from getting gloopy on the sides? I guess
I'll go and I'll slip my paint and pick up that white, put it back where it belongs. Right.
Can you see on my brush though how it's globby up here, but there's not very much paint down here on the chisel?
Yeah, and then it'll depend on what kind of stroke you're trying to do. If you're doing daisy strokes, then you won't need all that paint all the way down here. All you'll need is...
That's how it always loads for me, though. That's the problem that I'm having, is keeping enough down at the chisel.
Right, and then when you're doing your stroke...
I'm using the wrong angle or the wrong pressure.
When you're doing your stroke, you're not pushing all the way down. You're maybe pushing a third way down. So you're gonna always load your brush more than you need. So if you're needing to use a quarter of your brush pressure, you need to have it half loaded at least. So then that way it gives it movement, right? So it's not necessary that you need all that paint in there. That paint in there is helping your brush move, wiggle the moisture, right? So then when you're hardly putting any pressure...
I can't get it loaded. I can't get it to stay loaded on the chisel. All of my paint wants to go further up. So
maybe you are putting more. Maybe you are putting more pressure. Maybe too much pressure. Again, depends on the look you're looking. Sometimes I will put more pressure, but that's when I really want a big stroke.
I mean pressure in my blending pile when I'm actually loading my brush. Does that pressure matter?
You can see how I'm sliding. I want to make sure that my brush is wet all the way up to the 2/3 area.
Right, and it is.
And then you can go, and then when you're going to come up from your plate, pick up with a little less pressure.
Less pressure.
But as you're blending it, you want to make sure you got good pressure to get it nice and moist up there.
Yeah.
And then, yes, I do kind of back up on my pressure a bit when I'm going to finally pick it up. Does that make sense more? I know I even have to slow myself down sometimes. But it will make a difference on what kind of strokes that you're trying to do. Right? Unless you want that really... I hardly ever put that much pressure. And if I want to make something that big, I'll go and get a bigger brush.
Right.
So
I don't have a problem with the pressure on the paper. I think it's the pressure when I'm loading.
And picking it up, yeah.
I think I've got the stroke, but I think the pressure on the plate is wrong because my bristles separate and leave the streaks in my stroke because I don't have enough paint inside of it. So I think I'm pressing too hard.
Yeah, when you first start out, you gotta press a lot. But then, yeah, I am. When I think about it more, I do lift up on that pressure, and I'm only putting a quarter amount of pressure to pick up that paint.
Okay, so about the same amount of pressure as I'm going to use for the stroke.
Exactly. But you always want to have your brush loaded more than you need so that it keeps it moving. Right? That paint will move down, and then also the wiggle movement that you get. See how flexible my brush is moving? Because I have moisture all the way down. Even though I'm not getting the paint out of that area, it still needs to be there to help the flow. And then every once in a while when you want to do a little bump, it's there, right? Because a lot of our stroke work is a variety of pressures, right? So sometimes we're doing small little movements, they're not hardly any pressure. Then we'll put a big, ending on it, and we're putting more pressure on the way out. Right, so we're always playing around with the variety of pressure. And like I said, working on these plastic sleeves are super, super easy, usually great. And then you go and you try and practice on the paper, and you notice like this just plain straight wiggle, right? How far can I go where I'm starting to run out of paint? Right, and I'm only pressing 2/3 of the way, 1/3 of the way down. Right? And then you still got all this paint on this side. So if you do your stroke going this way, you still all have that paint on both sides of your brush. But if you're dominantly doing your stroke from right to left, you're only using one side of your brush. And then it starts to gloop and get full up on the other side. So then I use my blending pile to get that smoothed out again. Right? Often you'll see Donna, she'll do her leaves, she'll do a stem, and then she's doing a leaf on this way, and then she's doing a leaf on this way. And you're like, how can you get that many strokes out of your brush? Well, you could only do that once, because you're using both sides of your brush to unload, and then the paint is still on that side. You can put pressure on the left. I call it right-handed and left-handed strokes. Not that you're right-handed or left-handed, but I do believe that painting towards the right way, towards the left way, it's always going to be harder for righties and lefties. But I always say that you need to practice those left-handed directions, right, more than you do the right-handed directions. So that's the little plus about having your brush loaded well, is that you're able to do those strokes and do a combination of one stroke leaves and get it unloaded on both sides of your brush. As soon as I go and try and do that third leaf, I don't have enough paint. So again, I'm always dip, working in good if you think it's getting a little bit dry because you've done a million strokes, right? And then re-moisten the area. And I haven't even put any floating medium on my plate yet. But a lot of times, if I'm not happy with something, and if the second time I'll go, oh, I need a little bit more white on my edge, then I'll come in and do a little tip, and then I'll get a nicer, brighter edge the second time. Right, so a lot of times I'm going in.
So much brighter than mine.
Well, the camera right now is actually pretty bright right now. This is apple red I'm using. But a lot of times I'll put the paint in, especially on paper, and then I'll, work it in a little bit, back up, go in over it again, right, to get it into the paper, especially paper. You won't have to work that hard on a previously painted surface. Some of my students have showed me their practice. They'll get a cereal box, and then, because I tell you guys to do that, and they'll paint the whole thing with just a light coat of paint, let it dry, and then choose other colors, and go and practice now on this dry painted area. Pretend that was green, and now I'm coming in with a different color. Right, you're going to get more slip on a previously painted area than the paper the first time. So if you think about doing that second stroke, it's just going to make things look a lot nicer if you just go ahead. Maybe in that stroke you see that the bottom was dry and the top was fine. So this is where we need to take notice and then make that adjustment. Maybe you do need a little bit of medium just on the bottom area, not on the top. Right? Maybe we need to slow down a little bit too, because on drier surfaces, you need to slow down to let that paint absorb. Go really slow and you'll see it'll get perfect coverage. If you go too fast, you'll get more skidding.